Was it a Wendigo? That is a question many people ask. Hello, I am Evan Kascinde with the What Have You Done YouTube channel. And I just want to say that, well, Happy New Year, and welcome to the new one. This is 4 Wendigo stories to kick off the new year. But before we do, turn the lights down, get your headphones up, make sure their blinds are closed, make sure their doors are locked, and, well, pray that if you're in a forest, that it doesn't come for you. Anyways, off with the first story. Wendigo encounter in Maine. Throughout my youth, and in through adulthood, I've had several encounters with entities and energies that are not of this realm. At least not as far as science and history is concerned. These past few years especially, I've had several terrifying experiences being stalked while taking walks, and late at night around Terraner, Maine. Sometimes I'm overcome with a sense of fear that's animalistic, and an innate sense of paranoia consumes me, as if something is watching me from the woods, and I need to get to safety fast. On other occasions, I've actually had something quite aggressively follow me, alongside me from a tree line, chasing me away from certain areas, whispering a low, human-like tone as it moves in the woods alongside me. It sounds like human footsteps crunching across tree branches, leaves, but so much larger, heavier than any human can step. This thing can also hurl itself from treetop to treetop. The power of it is so great that it has actually knocked down trees, full goddamn trees, as it leaps. I could not fucking make this shit up. It is terrifying to be followed by something that is A, whispering as it walks beside you, and even when you're running, B, can seemingly teleport from one side of the road to the other in seconds. To be fair, it is most likely just swinging above. And C, so big it can knock down trees, and D, it is so evasive. It can do all these things while remaining hidden and not perceived by the naked eye. Besides those encounters, I've actually visually seen something I can only relate as a Wendigo. It was either comfortable enough with my energy to reveal itself, or something else altogether. Maybe it wanted to eat me. Maybe it wanted to possess me. Maybe it wanted to speak to me. I really don't know, because I didn't stick around long enough to find out. The energy of this thing, the way it looked, was so offensive, so terrifying. I only imagined long enough to visualize what I instinctively knew was coming through the woods and was about to show itself to me. I was frozen. I waited for this thing to come out of the woods. Looking back, I don't know if it was curiosity or the power of the creature itself. I locked eyes with this thing, and when I did, I was suddenly watching myself from its perspective, as if I was now inside the creature. Horrified, I tore myself away. I was on the front steps right next to the door, and I ran inside with a lit cigarette. I was so scared I wasn't even thinking any thought besides run now. I locked the door, hurried to my bedroom, and screamed for my housemate. I refused to even step outside my bedroom for the entire night, and I pulled the blinds down and pushed my bookcase between my bed and window. This particular encounter was so terrifying I was shaking for hours and didn't sleep that night. Some definite details I can remember of this creature was the face that it was sunken in. Its had very large size, which I should have been There were craters of black in the middle, golden glowing orbs, very, very bright, flame-like. It was all on all fours. This thing could 100% easily walk if it wanted to. Like, no problem. The creature was very, very thin. I remember that detail very clear. It was chest near skeletal, and its stomach caved in as if it hadn't eaten in 100,000 years. Its arms and legs were both very, very, very long. Both arms and legs were insanely muscled and massive. Honestly, its arms and legs were the only part of the creature's anatomy that had any mass about it. The creature itself was big. I'm talking about 10, 11 feet tall easily. And if I had to guess, it weighed anywhere between 500 to 800 pounds. Seemingly had fur covering parts of its body, along the top of its arms, back and thighs. The fur was scarce. Initially I thought werewolf, but after looking up different cryptids, I can safely say I don't think that was what was that. Other details I remember was its mouth. The thing was smiling at me. Its teeth were razor sharp, almost needle-like and long. The size of its smile, and the teeth took up most of its face. Where her nose should have been, there was a deer head. Its whole was just straight a deer skull, whole body very skeletal. Anyway, I'd really like to talk to someone who had similar experiences, or somebody who can relate. This thing, by the way, was not the only cryptid I've encountered or been chased by. The Androscoggin, and all around Androscoggin County, is very, very terrifying. Old, haunted, and linked to some kind of portal or some shit. Leline, perhaps. All of this is just dust in the wind. And the only thing I know is the fact that what I apparently have witnessed and heard so many times at night while walking along the river. I've heard screaming so terrifying, otherworldly, I can only relate it to the cry of a banshee. But as for me, I would face any of those creatures as opposed to a Wendigo. Possible Wendigo encounter in southern Ontario. I originally posted this on the r/Skinwalkers subreddit, but I figured I'd post it here too. Hi everyone, had a very strange encounter in my woods today, and I thought I'd share it and get some opinions. For some background, I live in a small town between Toronto and Ottawa in traditional Anishinaabe lands. I usually walk my dog every day, sometimes multiple times a day, all throughout the woods. I decided to take my dog out for a walk this afternoon and not put my headphones in. I usually do because, as I stated, I walk out there every day. As we were walking, I heard a voice call my name in almost sing-song voice. Naturally, I stopped and looked around. It called for my dog to come to me, and he stopped where he was, stared at me for a while, and eventually came to me and did not call out for the voice or acknowledge it. I walked around a little more and didn't see anything. Just for some context, I live with my parents and my mom's know I am totally freaked out about skinwalkers, wendigos, and the such. I had the bonfire a few nights ago and she hid and was calling and trying to freak me out. I figured since she knew I was by myself, she was trying to freak me out, and it did sound familiar to her voice. As I continued walking and looking, I heard, "Come over here." As soon as I heard it, I was instantly freaked out because not only did it sound further away than when my name is called, I don't know if the myth goes when they sound closer or far away, vice versa, but also it sounded like my own voice saying it. Last I checked, there are not two of me. I also heard this call out much more clearly when my name was called. Anyways, I didn't acknowledge the voice and, well, making sure my dog was with me, I got the absolute hell out of there. When I got to the house, no one had been outside and no one had called for me. My family has lived on this property for generations and we live outside a very, very small town. I have no neighbors and this would be close enough for me to hear them that clearly. I have no idea what was out there this afternoon, but I can tell you for certain, I'll never walk out there with my headphones on again. I feel like it's worth mentioning that my sister has been whistling out there to freak me out, and I know that supposedly attracts the Wendigo. I did also smoke shortly before walking, but I've been smoking daily for years and never suffered from auditory hallucinations, or heard any sort of voices while high. I've never posted on here before, but I have other experiences, and honestly, I don't know how this is end, but we think it's going to end badly. Wendigo outside the camper. I realize how unbelievable this story might be, but I assure you, it is entirely true. I've had countless experiences with the supernatural since I was 4. I am currently 43. But this is one of my most terrifying ones I've had. I've looked at some of the stories in this community to see if there's anything I haven't discovered yet. I thought that if I shared my encounter here, there might be someone who has some information that could help. Along with the story, I've had an experience with a Wendigo that fall of early October in northern Minnesota, in the state forest very close to, if not on, a reservation. I've always heard that speaking of them can draw them to you, but I hadn't thought or listened to any Wendigo stories anytime close to my encounter. It was staying with some very dear friends, let's call them M and C. They have a camper in their yard by the lake for guests to sleep in. I had walked down to the camper from my house with the miniature Dachshund Ebony around midnight and found that I needed to set some things up, primarily the heater. By the time I was done getting everything in order, it was approximately 13:30. It's 1:30 for you Americans. I never thought to lock the door because really I figured it's in the middle of the woods, so there was nothing to worry about. I was wrong. I would not last long in this story. I had closed the curtains, thank God, and I was having trouble falling asleep because my anxiety was going mad. M&C's dogs were barking outside and the geese they would not stop honking. Ebony, who usually sleeps under her covers, was sitting by my hip while I laid on my side, and I could feel her turning her head back and forth like she was trying to track something outside. I tried tucking her in under the blankets to calm her down, but she kept returning to her perch on my hip. I have no idea how long I lay there. I would say at least 40 minutes. When all of a sudden I heard M's voice outside the camper. Anybody in there? And it sounded like claws dragging down the side of the camper. I almost called back to her, and I realized, 1, she and C were both fast asleep by now. 2, M knew I was in there. She wouldn't ask if anybody was. Suddenly, I noticed everything had gone absolutely silent outside. The dogs and the birds had stopped carrying on, the gusts of wind had even stopped, and it was the kind of silence you hear about when you hear of them. How the woods go mute when something evil is in the area. Then another hit me. Ebony would be losing her shit and barking out the door if that had been anything human. She was frozen on my hip, dead quiet, shaking. I didn't dare to move. But I was really starting to have to take a fat piss. Now I remember that I hadn't locked the door. I have no idea how long I lay there, debating whether I should get up and use the bathroom and lock the door, but it felt like an eternity. In reality, I guess it was maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I thought it might have been a skinwalker at first, but remember, they don't mimic the voices of your loved ones to lure you into the woods. Wendigo do. I knew these creatures, demons, whatever they are, can lure humans out of their abodes and make eye contact with you. And everything in me was screaming to make sure I didn't look outside. I made doubly sure I didn't look through any cracks in the curtains as I walked softly to the front of the camper and very slowly turned the lock. Praying and holding my breath, I made sure to keep my eyes away from the windows as I crawled back into bed. I pulled Ebony close and she finally stayed under her blankets. I stuck a peek at my phone for a time before I lay down. Figured it had to be close to 3 a.m. It was about 2:30. As soon as I laid down, the wind kicked back up. M&C's basset hounds erupted into howls as they came running down to the camper and a little ways into their trees. And the geese started their noise again. I heard bassets come back to the camper, barking a few more times until they laid down outside the door to protect me. I didn't get out of bed again that night. I told M&C what had happened next morning. I was hoping that M would say she'd come down to check on me and Ebony. But she confirmed what I already knew, that they had gone to bed as soon as I had left the house. I set a prayer over their house, the camper, and all this the following night. I had an uneventful night. I also spoke with another guy who is familiar with the supernatural to see if he knew any more about Wendigo. I'm sure how accurate the information gave me was, or if it was reliable at all, but I asked him why Ebony had made a peep. I assumed it was because she had absolutely petrified. He said a Wendigo can control animals to keep them from alerting their owners in his presence. He also told me they can't enter houses that aren't made of wood directly from the forest they're hunting in. Tents and campers included, because they consist of man-made materials. A lock is useless. They can unlock and open our door so they can try to lure you outside. They typically stay in the woods, but they'll come into a smaller town and never into a city. I have heard of any of what he told me before. Again, I can't speak for accuracy, but I haven't researched the claims either. He also made me never go outside to pee at night. If I ever go camping and bring a bucket or something to use, make sure I always close tent flaps and curtains before falling asleep. He said if the flaps are open and you can see outside, the Wendigo can make eye contact with you and draw you out. After leaving M&C's to go to my father's house for a few days, I had the distinct feeling of being watched. When I took Ebony outside, my father lives 3 hours away from M&C, but his house is in the country. I told myself it was only the fear from the experience, and I know about the Wendigo triggering an overactive imagination. I never heard anything, and I watched Ebony's behavior very closely, and she didn't act like she had in the camper. I'm moving back to that area from Canada, and this experience has been weighing heavily on my mind. I've been trying to find any information about watering them off, or if they have a home hunting range like cougars do, or if they move on from a region. My prayers did work the second night, so I figure I can pray over her property. Also, I have various religious artifacts that I can use, since the Wendigo is an evil spirit that possesses people or physically manifests. Frustratingly, the majority of what comes up in searches is utter garbage like Wikipedia. Does anyone know if a Wendigo stays in one area? Are my concerns about coming back? I get moved into a cabin water did, or am I watering excessively? Do you have any tips for warding them off? Thanks again for any information you can offer. I don't know if I encountered a Wendigo, so I am looking to hear what you think. Before I want to tell the story, I wanted to give some background on my area. Now, feel free to criticize. I know I'm Canadian, but this took place in northern Alberta, Canada, and in Treaty 8 territory. I'm Woodland Cree and grew up in the area, so I heard many stories about that area, especially the ones about the Wendigo, or as more Algonquin tribes would know it, the Wendigo. Like how one was killed and they cut off the head and buried it near the garage area, and the body near the whitefish. This is to prevent the body and head from reattaching and reviving the creature. Another story I heard is how the entire area of the woodwind is haunted by evil spirits, and I always feel creeped out when I visit that area. All of this happened when me and my cousins were out quaiding, and this was around late September to early October. This means that the days got shorter, so it was almost completely dark at night. This was at Gerard, where the head was supposedly buried nearby. We started at, I believe, 6 p.m. This was the first time we hung out in person since the pandemic started. We stayed out till 9 or 10, so it was completely dark out. But we weren't going through the fields, and we pretty much grew up playing it. Going through the reserve, seeing the house where we spent so many good memories at. It was a refreshing time because COVID just brought my mood down a lot, so it was nice to have a break. There's this baseball field that we went through how many times without a problem. This time when we were about to go through the field again, it was completely dark. Only light we had was in the headlights of the quad, but we were used to driving off in the dark, so this didn't seem out of the ordinary for us. But this time fell off. I felt like something was watching us or stalking us. A gut feeling. I wasn't the only one who felt this. My cousin felt it and said, "Do you feel that feeling too?" I said, "Yeah, I feel it." So we decided to turn around. On our way back, my cousin turned his head and looked behind us, and immediately he looked forward and sped up. When we were pretty far away, he said, "The reason I sped up is because I thought I saw something moving back there." After we decided to call it a night, we went back home. I honestly have no idea why we felt that. It was like out of nowhere. Like I said, supposedly the head was buried in that area. Maybe it had to do with it. I would love to hear what you guys think. Was it the Wendigo or something else? Thanks, guy. Update. It happened again. This time, I was in my home, specifically my camper, and it was outside. You see, Wendigos are said that if you make eye contact, they can control you in a way, hypnotize you, maybe influence you to come outside. As I had seen it, I was going to open my door, but I just want to say I am so glad that I have a cat. As my cat biting my leg to the point where I almost bled was the only thing that stopped me and it snapped me out of that trance. I really wonder, was it the Wendigo? Alright everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for the 7 subscribers. I know it's not much, but I'd just like to thank everyone. I'm Evan Kascinde with the What Have You Done YouTube channel, and you can check out our film channel, which is something by me called Yoldasi Films. You can find the link in the description as well. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps us out. On that note, the first 100 subscribers, I have a list, will get a shout out when we hit 1,000 subscribers. So I thought that would be nice, a little favor to do. I'm keeping a list, don't worry. When I say 100, by the way, I mean first 100. So, yeah. Now, about that cat. Well, they say cats are human-like cognitive. They have critical thought. Maybe that's why it wasn't influenced by the Wendigo. Maybe since cats can be capable of critical thought, they can resist the Wendigo just as well as humans can, but since the cat didn't make eye contact, it knew better. Anyways, Yoldasi Chili, I really enjoyed this one, but come on. Click one of these. Click it. Click it. You know you want to. Come on, click it. Come on, please. Please. Okay, fine, do what the hell you want to do. Just sit here for 5 seconds. Did you change your mind yet?